This is Eliyahu Sher from www.lovingkindness.co from Chesed Ve'emet, and we're learning at the moment Derech Hashem. We're on part 3 of Derech Hashem. We decided to actually start with part 3 because I really enjoy the themes that are discussed here. And since we've been learning Tanya together also, many of the themes that we see over here are quite related to the Tanya, and it's fascinating to see that here you have the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato, who's speaking about the same concepts that are being discussed in the Tanya. And when the themes come out in the same way, it really just goes to show how true these particular points are, even though the concepts are highly spiritual and deep. But when you see it in the one book and you see it in the other book, all of a sudden it starts to make sense, and one begins to see the connection between the various elements that we're learning about. So we've got to point number 5, and last week we spoke about how the soul comes into the world, and we discussed that also in the Tanya earlier on, that it comes through 5 different levels. This is where we ended our shiur last week, that the soul is divided into 5 levels, which are called the Nefesh, Ruach, Neshamah, Chayah, and Yechidah. And before that, we spoke about the fact that the soul consists of 2 main areas. One is the animalistic part, and the other is the godly part. And again, the Tanya is speaking about these very themes. So it really clicks in and connects one to the other. Now we continue on section 5 over here within part 3 on the soul and its activities. We're looking at sefaria.org.il or sefaria.org, wherever you are in the world. It's a free service. Anybody who wants to learn more Torah, they can just go to sefaria.org and they can see all this material, much of which has been translated, though not all of it has been translated. V'amnam, yesh Neshamah Elyona hazois. There is to this superior soul, which means to say, we've forgotten now about we've left behind the animal soul, and we're speaking about the soul, which consists of 5 levels. And as we said earlier on in the Tanya, in the shiur that we were learning today, that is there really a translation for these 5 levels? It doesn't seem like there's a translation. So the question is, why do we have these 5 levels altogether? Well, the Ramchal is going to describe to us in a little while why really we have these 5 levels, what they're doing. So for these Neshamah Elyona, this higher level section of the soul, Mikrim miyuchadim re'uyim la kfi inyana. There are all sorts of particular happenings that are fitting for it, according to its particular status. And even though it is that it is connected to the body, as we mentioned before, in other words, all these levels of the soul are in some way connected to the body. That's true. We have the Nefesh, we have the Ruach, we have the Neshamah, and then afterwards we have 2 other levels that surround it. But let's just talk certainly about the 3 lower levels, which are connected to the body. But still, the soul moves about in various ways. Sometimes we can perceive it. Most times we can't perceive it because things are happening and we're not even aware that they're happening. Now, nishar la ketzat inyan im haruchanim. The truth is that there still remains to it a connection with spiritual aspects. Ma she'ein kashra b'guf monea mimena. Which is not connecting, which when it's not connected to the body, because the body doesn't prevent it from being connected to these spiritual sources. So we have the soul sitting in the body, and it turns out that there are times where the soul can free itself from the body with the permission of the body in order to attend to other things. Amnam, indeed, or however, ein nimshach v'noilad mizeh davar mugash, comes out that there isn't anything that comes out of this that can be tangibly felt. V'nichar b'seikel ha'adam, and it is recognized in a person's intelligence, u'machashavto, in his mind, ela lifamim al tzad hami'ut. There's a typing error over here. It should not say ayin lamed, because the word would be al, but what they've done is they've written it incorrectly. I checked it up, didn't make sense to me when I looked at it. It's al tzad, which means the following, and it is recognizable by the human intelligence, and it's not recognizable, but rather sometimes, this happens in the minority of cases. V'hu mashe amru zal, and this is what our rabbi said, afal gav te'ihu lo chazei, mazlei chazei. This is an amazing teaching in the Talmud, and it says that even though he doesn't see it, his Mazal sees it. These are very powerful words. And basically what they mean to teach us is as follows. I'll give an example in the practical world, and from this, everybody will be able to come up with as many examples as they want to afterwards. And the example is of a person who experiences a state known as deja vu. And basically this means a person can go to a situation in life, and when he finds himself somewhere, he suddenly gets this odd feeling, and he thinks to himself, maybe I've been here before. And then he thinks to himself, it's as if I've seen the whole scene in front of me before. Perhaps I dreamed it. Perhaps I saw it in some sort of, in my imagination. Perhaps it's just a part of me. But for some reason, I feel that there's a connection going on here, and I have no idea what this connection is. Our rabbis teach us a powerful thought. They say that afal gav de ihu lo chazeh, mazlei chazeh. Even though he himself doesn't see something happening, his mazal sees it. You know, sometimes there are people, another example of this situation of the deja vu is that a person might find himself walking somewhere, and for no apparent reason, he changes his direction and he walks in another direction, and something happens, like a tree falls down, and it misses him. And he looks behind him for a second, and he says to himself, wow, had I continued to walk on straight, that tree would have hit me. And he thinks to himself, why did I change directions? Then he thinks to himself, I was thinking in my mind about something, and for some reason I thought maybe I should go in this direction, and I went in that direction. The Torah teaches us that the soul is constantly occupied with certain things that are going on, even if we are unconscious and we don't know what is happening. The soul is completely aware of certain things that occur. And so for this reason, sometimes it happens that we do such a thing, like we're walking somewhere and we change direction and something happens, or we find ourselves in the presence of somebody else and we say, I'm sure I've met this person before, or something, anything like that. This is his mazal. This is his soul talking. And the soul is saying, I'm experiencing something now which I cannot explain. But because he has a body and the body surrounds him, he's covered with a vessel that says, I cannot tell you what it is because I have to garb it. I have to clothe it, because that's the point. In this world, things are clothed in. It's a vessel. It's closed in, and I can't reveal what it is, because if I revealed it, the whole point of the existence of a soul, which is a spiritual being in a physical body, would fall away. And God wants us to experience the physical world as a spiritual entity in a physical world. But nevertheless, God takes these levels of the soul, and every now and again, he allows the soul to escape the physical boundary, the physical bonds that it's bound to the human body, and it somehow jumps out of that, and it experiences something very spiritual. That already this matter came to the soul, Elyona, it means to the supernal soul, but it didn't yet reach the person's thoughts. That means to say that these levels of the soul exist on a higher plane somewhere. And what's happening is that because they're connected to particular things that the physical body is not, but we are connected. It's our soul. It's the higher levels of our soul that's connecting to us. Like I said before, it's kind of like this puppeteer, and he's holding onto this puppet with the strings, and he's got these wooden things that he's moving about, and the puppet below moves. And of course, if a person is wise enough to realize, he looks up and he sees that the puppeteer is holding the puppet through the strings, and he's moving the wooden planks, and that's causing the puppet to move about. But the person who puts his eyes on the physical puppet, he thinks the puppet's moving. He doesn't realize that there's something else going on above. Well, every single one of us has these higher levels of the soul that are attached much higher, and they're functioning all the time. This is an amazing thing. And every now and again, they wake up and they tell us something, even if we're not quite sure what it is. Of course, a person who's more spiritual, who connects more to spirituality, and he removes himself from physical things, he'll be able to attach himself more to the spirituality than the person who is cleaving to physical things. But for all people, things happen where all of a sudden there is this escape, where the soul from above, which is sitting in the supernal realms, and it is experiencing certain things, it gets an idea of what's happening, and it's going to transmit that idea to the soul below of where it's connected. And ultimately, this will be connected to the person's physical body, his brain, and he'll think about it. and something will happen to him and he'll react in a certain way. He will not necessarily know why he is reacting to it, but he knows that something has told him he had to do something in a certain way. And of course, I'm talking about positive things. I'm talking about good things. I'm talking about meaningful things. I'm in no way talking about the case of a person who is evil and he comes along, he does a particular act which is dreadful to the world. And afterwards he goes to court and they say, well, why did you do that? And he says, well, there was a voice telling me to do it. I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to the normal concept of a normal person who is connecting with his higher spiritual powers, the soul powers that exist there. And every now and again, something comes through and tells him, this is the path. This is what you need to do. This is good. This is important. And it flashes in front of him. He recognizes it. He sees it. He clicks with it. And he realizes this is important. I think I have to follow this direction. Perhaps even this happens to, for example, people who convert to Judaism. And of course, converting to Judaism is not something that has to be done at all. The Jewish people don't go out to the non-Jewish world and say convert. But if you speak to a person who's converted and you say to him, why did you convert? They say to you, you can ask people who are really sincere converts, they say to you, they converted because they suddenly saw some sort of truth. They experienced the truth of what the Torah was. And you ask them, but how did it happen? And they say, it just happened. They were examining something. They were listening to something. They saw something. And they experienced that this is true. And they saw the goodness of it. And they said, this is for me. I need to follow it. Well, perhaps this is what happens. Their higher level of the soul kind of woke them up, kind of an alarm clock. It just signaled a certain thing, and they said, this is important for me. And I'm talking, again, exclusively on the concept of goodness, on the concept of kindness, on the right path